Thank you for your interest here at North Hills, where we are more than Sunday. If you have any questions or would like to know more about our ministries, you can always visit us online at north-hills.org. Now join us as Pastor James delivers his message.
Well, good morning. It is so awesome to be here this morning. I want to tell you a little story to start this up. I was 10 years old, and my dad came home from work a little early one day, and he had this big box in his hand. He brought it in, and he kind of set it down and opened the box and began taking out what I can only describe as the most beautiful thing I had ever seen in my life. It was our family's first computer. Now, this was right around the time where AOL was coming out. You guys remember AOL? AOL used to send these free CDs with AOL on them, and they were everywhere. You'd get them in the mail. You'd get them at the grocery store. We started using them as coasters in our house because we just had so many of them. And then when you went to install it, AOL was this amazing thing where you attached this other separate thing to a computer called a modem, and then you turned it on and tried to connect, and it made those really and you waited in anxious anticipation as the screen would come up and it would say, "You've got mail." That was a changing point in my life. I'm probably one of the younger people that still remembers life without the internet. Now, a lot of people don't know when the internet was started. Al Gore apparently invented it back in the 60s. There are some other people that say it was started between colleges and universities to share information, but all we know is that over the course of somewhere around, I'm going to say early 80s, really start to take off in the early 90s, to today, we are so interconnected that a world without the internet seems like the dark ages. It seems like a time where, I was thinking about this the other day. Do you remember what it was like? And I know you young people up there, down here, don't know what this is like. Do you remember when if you had to make a phone call and you were driving, you had to pull over and use a payphone? Do you remember when you broke down on the side of the road and you didn't have any way to contact anybody and you had to either do this or walk? I can hardly remember those times because the world has changed. Everything has changed. And the way we engage the world has changed as well. We're starting this sermon series called #Trending, and I would not be doing this sermon series if it weren't for the internet and the changes that we have had. Trends are not new. Things have been trending for thousands of years. Royalty would go and they would get this huge palace, and then that would trend in other cultures, like, I want a palace like that. David wanted to build a temple for the Lord, so he's like, well, how do I build a temple for the Lord? Well, what's trending? What do I need? Well, gold is trending. Let's make it out of gold. Like that kind of stuff. It's always been happening. Even up until, in the 20th century, before the internet, we had trends. You just had to read about them in the newspaper every day. You had to read about them, and you know what? You had to wait 24 hours until the next newspaper came out, unless there's an evening edition. Then you got it that time. But who has the time to read 2 newspapers a day? And I know some of you did that, and many of you might still do that. Or on Sunday, you got the big edition, and it had all the trends that were going on that day. Well, the internet has changed all of that. You don't have to wait for a newspaper. We get our information in real time, as it happens. I find it very interesting. A couple things have happened over the course of the last couple years. Do you guys remember when we found Osama bin Laden in Pakistan? Do you know how the news of his defeat got around? Facebook. Kobe Bryant retired on Twitter. That running back who we won't mention up in Seattle retired on Twitter during the Super Bowl. Because that is the way our news is coming to us now. in 15-second intervals and 144 characters. That is how we get our news. And then, more recently, probably in the last 5 years, maybe 10 years, we have the invention of the hashtag. And some of you are like, what's a hashtag? Isn't that the pound sign? Or isn't that the thing on the road, on our phones at the bottom right-hand corner? Well, a hashtag is this thing that was invented by Twitter to help track what is trending on the internet. So they would establish these certain hashtags, they're registered, and then at the end of your tweet, you would just put hashtag YOLO, or hashtag life is great, or hashtag politics, or hashtag science, or hashtag NFL, or hashtag MLB, NHL, NBA, all of this. Hashtag became the way that we track what's trending on the internet. And now it's so popular that you can actually type in a hashtag on Facebook. Facebook's adopted a hashtag after the fact. Twitter, Instagram, and just kind of type in hashtag whatever. You can actually type in hashtag trending, and it will show you what is trending on the internet right now. This morning I woke up and I was like, I wonder what's trending on the internet. So I went to Facebook and I went to Twitter, and this is what came up. This is what's trending on the internet. Now, I know that's a little small, but number one thing trending on Facebook is a movie trailer. Not a movie, but a movie trailer, X-Men Apocalypse. Apparently Ryan Reynolds appears as Deadpool in a Japanese trailer for the movie. I don't know why that's important. Number two, an important one, politics. U.S. presidential candidate holds double-digit lead over Donald Trump. Apparently, Matt LeBlanc wants somebody fired off of Top Gear. There is other things all the way down. You got NFL, Peyton Manning, and then you have some TV show at the bottom. Then on Twitter takes a little bit more. You can't really just look at it and see what's trending. You actually look at the hashtag. Now, the first one, FRAIRL. I had no idea what that meant, so it's a link, so you click on it. Apparently, that's some kind of soccer match that's going on between France and Northern Ireland. And then, of course, NBA Finals is still trending. Dub Nation is still trending. Sunday morning is trending, but I don't think that has anything to do with church. Pray for Pat. I don't know who Pat is. I probably should have clicked on that one because at least that has prayer in it. Apparently they want you to criminalize an 80s song or band. People skills, koi bake, no idea, spirit chat. But this is how we measure what's trending. Now, I think if you were to look up there are a couple things that are very obvious. One is that most of that stuff is not important. Most of that stuff is a total waste of time. Most of that stuff, you would think, why should I care about that? I find it interesting that last week, when I did this, they were totally different. Last week, you still had things about the Orlando shooting. Last week, you still had things about gun control. Last week, you had a lot of things that were trending. But when we look at that, this is the world we live in. But what I started to realize is that a lot of these trends, a lot of these hashtags have a lot in common. You see, behind every single one of these is a person who is screaming for significance, who is screaming to mean that their world matters. Now, a lot of it is just kind of random stuff, but when we think about some of the things that are trending, why do you think things like movies or things like the NFL or things like the NBA are trending at a time like this? And I think, and I could be wrong, but I think that a lot of times entertainment and what's going on in the world of entertainment, what's going on in the world of Hollywood or sports is a distraction. It's a distraction from really what's going on in the world around us. Because in the world around us, you turn on the news, you look at your Facebook page, you look at your Twitter feed, you look in a newspaper or a magazine. It seems like this is a very scary world. It seems like there's a lot going on and a lot of us are afraid. I found it interesting. I was looking at the news yesterday about what happened in Great Britain. I don't know if any of you know what happened in Great Britain, but Great Britain decided as a nation that they were going to leave the European Union. And they voted, and it was like 54 to 46% of the population voted to leave. And it was hashtag Brexit, which is a play on Britain and exit. Now, what I found interesting was they did interviews of people who voted to leave, and I found this one very, very interesting interview where this young man, probably about my age, was being interviewed like, you voted to leave. Why did you vote to leave? You're like, well, I voted to leave, but I didn't actually want to leave. I didn't think my vote counted. I just kind of jokingly voted to leave, and apparently everybody else did the same thing. And I found that interesting that a young man like me would not think that his vote counted. Now, I just want you to say that's a lesson that when we get to the presidential election in November, every vote counts. So we have to vote because our vote matters. It's the number one thing that our forefathers fought for. Was trending back then. You know what's trending when Paul Revere had to ride his horse? That was their Twitter back then. A horse with a slip of paper. That's how they got information back and forth. Today we're going to be talking about what goes behind a lot of these trends. A lot of things like the Orlando shooting brings up. A lot of things, even when you dig a little deeper under what happened in Great Britain, you find that one of the reasons they voted to leave was because many of the people in Great Britain thought that they would be safer as a nation if they got out of the European Union. So many things that we talk about when we talk about the upcoming election, it all comes back to safety. Last week, I saw two stories that absolutely floored me. One of them is really serious, one of them is not. But they're the same story, and they're the same reason why we care about those stories. The first story was that a young man went on Google Earth, which is basically if you don't know Google Earth, you can go and look at satellite images of the entire world. Anywhere and look down, and you can zoom in, and actually that's kind of weird, but you can zoom into your house, and I've actually done that and seen my truck there, and I'm like, that's weird. Yeah, the government's not watching. But you you zoom in. So this one guy, and this is the thing, they just zoom in all over the world and look. Well, this guy went on Google Earth, and he zoomed in around the waters of Antarctica. And he saw what he is adamantly saying is a sea monster. Just in there, he circles it, and he does a YouTube video explaining this is a sea monster. And I thought, why in the world is this trending? This is dumb. Number one, it's way down there, but I started realizing, why would a sea monster trend? Because people are afraid that sea monster is going to come up and destroy San Francisco like it does in the movies. And then I saw another one right below it. Trending was an alligator crossing the road in North Carolina. And you think, why would people in North Carolina care that an alligator was crossing the road? You think 2 weeks ago, an alligator crossing the road in North Carolina would raise any internet buzz at all? When we talk about internet buzz, for some of you who don't know internet lingo, buzz is like the news. That's what we call the news these days, the buzz. But that's the reality. We are afraid for our safety. We are worried about our loved ones. We're worried about our finances. We're worried about the world around us. We're worried about everything because we are afraid that we're going to somehow lose what we have. We're afraid, and we talk about safety. I want you to turn in your Bibles to Ephesians chapter 5, verse 13 through 17. And this will serve as somewhat of an anchor passage of what we're going to be talking about over the course of the next few weeks. Ephesians chapter 5, 13 through 17. Paul's talking about the world around them. He's talking about what's going on in the world, and the people are afraid, the Christians are afraid that they are going to be persecuted by the church, or by Rome, that the church will be persecuted by Rome. So he writes these letters to all these churches to encourage them to continue, showing that underneath of everything that happens is the truth. The truth isn't always apparent. Ephesians chapter 5, 13 through 17. But when anything is exposed by the light, it becomes visible. For anything that becomes visible is light. Therefore it says, "Awake, O sleeper, and arise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time because the days are evil. Therefore do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is." When we talk about safety, from a biblical perspective, we have to understand that safety was never promised. But we do have opportunities. So our sermon in a sentence, what we're going to be talking about today is this. No one is promised safety, only opportunity. Now I'll explain what that means as we go. Now when we think about this, safety is something that we hope for. We hope that we're safe. We hope our kids are safe. We hope that when we drive to work that we're safe, we don't get in an accident. We hope that when we're away from our homes that our home is safe. We hope for all of these things. And somehow we try to trade things for safety. We might trade a little freedom so that we can feel safer. We might think that when we come to know Jesus, and if you're not a believer and you're here today as a guest, you may have heard, give your life to Jesus and everything in your life will be perfect. That you will be safe, your kids will be safe, and everybody will be safe. That when you pray, loved ones won't pass away, that all this, everything will be safe. And that is not what the Bible teaches at all. The Bible doesn't promise us safety, but it does promise us opportunity. And what I mean by opportunity is we have an opportunity to respond to life in either the way the world responds or the way that God wants us to respond. When you think about this, my 3 main points today, I kind of put in a way that you could tweet these or post them on Facebook using a hashtag. I'm going to give you a hashtag. The first one is, life happens, be ready. Hashtag, life happens. Each and every day we go about our lives, we leave our houses, we leave our family, we go to work, and any number of things could happen that day. You could get a flat tire on the highway, and you could say, man, life happens. You could get in a car accident. You could get to work, and you could find out, man, we're downsizing, you don't have a job here anymore. Or a loved one could get sick. You could find that you have got one of those letters in the mail that you could be a winner and win $1 million from Publishers Clearinghouse. I don't know of anybody who's ever won that. But anyway, if you know of anybody, give them my number. I'd like to borrow some money. No, I'm just kidding. But all these things happen. We could be going through life, and any number of things could happen. The reality is that they do. There's really not a whole lot we can do to stop things that happen in our lives. But what can we do? We can be ready. And what does it mean to be ready? Does that mean that, well, I'm not going to drive a car because people get in accidents. I'm not going to fly in an airplane because 1 in every 350,000 flights has a crash. I'm not going to... one of the things that my mom told me, she's like, she doesn't go to opening nights of movies anymore. Why? Because one time there was a mass shooting at The Dark Knight Rises. You guys remember when that happened? She's like, if I don't go to movies at opening night, then I'm not going to be a part of anything like that. So we have to be ready for anything that life throws at us. Well, how can we respond when life happens? How are we ready? Well, it comes down to just always thinking positively. There's a lot of times we assume that people are out to get us, and the reality is most people are just thinking about themselves. So always think about how you're going to respond to something. Always have a response ready. The Bible actually talks about that. Always be ready to give a response for the hope that's in you. How can you respond positively in a situation? One of the things that I like to think about is if something bad happens, you're going to get through it. It's not the end of the world. We respond to that. Ephesians 5:15 says, "Look carefully how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise." Now, we have to be careful. To be careful is smart. To be wise is smart. To not make decisions that are going to put you in immediate danger is wise. It's good to plan ahead. It's good to plan, to make lists, to think about where you're going. But recognize that you're not going to be able to control everything. So plan for the things you can control so that when the things you can't control come along, you're going to be more prepared than if you just go out and wing it. Life happens, but be ready. Some of you may know the story of Job. Job is a story in the Bible about a guy whose name is Job, who was living life just as he was kind of going along, and for whatever reason, all this bad stuff just starts happening to him. And the Bible tells us that Job doesn't know what is happening to him. If you read the first chapter, that lays the groundwork that actually there was a dialogue between Satan and God in heaven, and God permitted, for whatever reason, Job to be tested. And as they went along, Job was just kind of having this bad stuff happen to him. He lost everything. He lost all of his family except for his wife, and even his health began to decline. And you're reading this story, and I just get sweating thinking about it, because so many things go wrong that we have no idea why they're going wrong. We like to believe that everything happens for a reason, but sometimes it feels like nothing is going right, that it's just, there's no reason at all. Why would all this bad stuff happen? And the moral of the story of Job is that Job was given a choice of how he would respond. Job had 3 friends. They came and met with him, and they were giving him advice, and they said, "Hey, Job, everything's going bad because God is angry with you. God's mad at you, and he's punishing you for the things that you've done wrong." Well, Job is like, "I don't think that's right." They're like, no, that's what it is. And they're arguing back and forth, and there are these long arguments, and I'm thinking to myself, Job needs to get some new friends, because they say to him, "Hey, Job, just give up. Curse God and die." That's not good advice to a friend who's hurting, by the way. But they say, "Job, just curse God and die." But I think Job understood that there are things in life that happen, that he was never promised that everything he would have would be safe, that his family would be safe, that all of his money would be safe, or his cattle would be safe. But Job was given an opportunity to respond to what was happening in his life. And what happened when all of that stuff went bad? Job refused to blame God. Job refused to say that this is God's fault. Job acknowledged that everything he had came from God anyway. So if God took it away, that was more than in his right to do so. He continued to worship God. He continued to praise God. And in the end, after the testing was over, God gave Job back everything and more. Because so much in our lives we think we have this stuff, and we just want to, if we have stuff, we have to protect it. But life's too short to kind of worry about all these things that we have no control over. The second point is, life is too short to spend time worrying about what you cannot control. And my hashtag for you is focus on what is important. You know, when we look at Facebook and we look at Twitter, we see a lot of things on there that really aren't that important. Once in a while, you'll see something that is important, but it's kind of sandwiched in with a bunch of stuff. You know, you got, this is how I see the internet. Entertainment, politics. Look, a cat. And that's it. We get so distracted by these things, and we forget to focus on the things that are really, truly important. There's a lot going on in the world around us. There's a lot going on outside the walls of this building. You know what? And the funny thing is, we spend so much time on the internet. We're more informed than we ever have been before. In all of human history, we know more about what's going on in all the corners of the earth yet we miss what's right in front of us. Sometimes we get so addicted to our devices or our computers that we miss the relationships of the people that are right in front of us. I don't know if you've ever seen, you go to a restaurant out and you see a family of 4 sitting around the table and they're all on their phones. Have you guys seen this? It's sad because you're missing that opportunity to actually have a relationship with people. Yet we go online and we have, 500, 600 friends. I have friends that have contacted me on Facebook that I went to elementary school and I haven't seen in 25 years. Yet we miss the people that are right in front of us. We miss our spouses. We miss our kids. We miss the opportunity to put the internet down and to focus on the people right in front of us. But we're so connected that we feel like that any connection is miserable. Some of you know that Amanda and I moved to Vallejo yesterday. We are finally locals here in Vallejo. We had some people come out and help us unload the truck when we pulled in. Thank you so much if you came out. We really appreciate it. And we got the trucks unloaded. We got everything kind of in the house and truck returned, shut the door, and now we'll spend the next 5 years unpacking. But I found it interesting. When I got into my house, you know what one of the first things that I did was? I set up the internet. Before the kitchen's unpacked, before the beds are put together, before even the kids are in the house, even before the dog gets outside to go to the bathroom, I set up the internet. And there's this saying in today's culture that says home is where your phone connects to the internet automatically. And I found it so awesome that I brought my modem from Livermore and I just plugged it in and it was like it immediately connected. And I thought to myself, man, I love it when things work the way they're supposed to. I call Comcast, I say, Comcast, can you set up my internet to be turned on at 12 o'clock on Saturday? And I plug it in, and lo and behold, it connects. Some of you are like, man, I wish Comcast worked like that for me. But that's the reality, is that even a short bit of time not being connected can be miserable. And we feel like we're disconnected. But there's so much on the internet that we can't control. I find it interesting, all my friends in the United States who care so much about Britain leaving the European Union, and I think, what does that have to do with you? And then I looked on a little further and said, as soon as Great Britain left the European Union, the stock markets went down like 20%. Wow, okay, it does affect us. It is something that we need to be concerned about. But can we control it? We can't control it. Can we control all of the crazy, whack job people that are walking around in the world just waiting like a ticking time bomb to go off? Can you control that? You can't control that. You can't control these things that happen. Like I said, life happens. You cannot control other people. But what can you control? Well, you can control your response to the world, and you can control your own actions. And you can control the way that you use your time. Ephesians 5:16 continues on from 15. It says, making best use of the time because the days are evil. How do you spend your time? If you were to think about your entire day, just pick one day. We'll call it a Monday because, Mondays are terrible anyway. So Mondays, you get up in the morning. And let's just say we'll say you get up at 6 o'clock. Some of you probably get up much earlier than that. And then you go to bed at maybe 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. What would you say takes up the largest percentage of your day? And you think about that. You might say, well, it's work because I spend 8 hours to 10 hours at work. But think about all of the time that as you go about your day, you're looking at your phone, you're looking at the internet, you're looking at the computer, you're looking at all this. So much of our day is tied into the internet that we don't even realize how much time we spend there. And then when we come home from work, we sit down on the couch and maybe we watch TV, maybe we pull out our phone again while we're watching TV. And again, I'm preaching to myself here because, I do these same things as well. But we spend so much time focusing on things that aren't important. What I'm trying to get you to see is that the things that are important aren't always online. And sometimes spending time online makes us feel like we are unsafe because the headlines are always the worst case scenario. When if we realize that mass shootings really aren't all that common in the grand scheme of life. Accidents aren't always that common. Fires aren't always that common. Tragedy is not always that common in our lives. But somehow we've created in our mind this world where we are unsafe. And the reality is, I think you are far more safe than you truly realize. So don't spend time worrying about things you can't control and start worrying about the things that you can. Use your time well. Why does Paul say? Because the days are evil. What does that mean, the days are evil? Well, in his day, the days were evil because they had such a short time. They were really fugitives from the law. To be a follower of Jesus was to be a criminal. Make use of every day because you don't know when your days are going to come to an end. Time is this timeline as we age along it that we get to the point where we are just like, we are glued to time. So many of us want more time, but time is limited to all of us and we don't know how long and how much time we have. So make the best use of every single day. One of the things that we talk about here at North Hills is that we want to love God, serve others, and we want to change the world. And we do want to change the world. But if you want to change the world, you need to start with a change in yourself. You need to start with a change in how you respond to the things around you. You need to make a conscious choice that you are not going to worry about things that you can't control, that you're going to put down the internet, you're going to put down your phone, and you are going to make a change in the way you interact with people. You're going to seek to build relationships with people. The Great Commission talks about how we are to make disciples of all nations, baptizing people in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. That is what we are called to do. And some of us actually believe that we can truly and honestly do that online. That we can make disciples without ever even meeting somebody, and I don't believe that's possible. Our relationships with God can't be in 144 characters. It has to be an ongoing conversation with God. Our relationships that we build with other people, even if they're for the sake of sharing Jesus with them, has to be more than just 144 characters. Why? Because people have short attention spans. You post a picture online of a Bible verse and you talk about giving your life to Jesus. That's there for 10 seconds, and the people that are online at that moment, that's when they see that. And maybe if more people click on it, it'll go. But a lot of people won't click on something religious. So how do we share our faith with people? Well, we actually have to get out behind the screens and have a conversation with people. Now, there's some introverts in here that you're like, absolutely not, I can't talk to people. I don't know if many of you know this, but I'm actually an introvert. I really, really struggle in large crowds of people. I really, really struggle when I have, I go out, and when I spend a lot of time around a lot of people, I get really drained. And I have to go back into my little cave, and I need to refresh there. But being an introvert is not an excuse to avoid people, to avoid the public. We're actually called, all of us, extroverts, introverts, to go out into the world. And you know what? There are introverts out there that will connect better with an introvert than with an extrovert. But we have to be willing to change ourselves, To make a decision that I'm going to maybe meet one new person today and I'm going to just introduce myself to them. Maybe it's not that first time I'm going to tell them about Jesus, but I'm going to introduce myself, I'm going to make a friend, and you know what? I'm going to have a conversation with somebody. Because you know what I found interesting is that a lot of us think we're different, but we're really very much the same. People that you come in contact with on a daily basis are going through many of the same things that you are. They're afraid of many of the same things that you are. They read the same internet. They read the same newspapers. They read the same posts. And people are genuinely afraid of what's going on in the world around us. I find it interesting that when we look at certain topics in the news, that both sides are for or against something for the same reason. Now, I don't want to get too political, but let's take gun control for a reason. People who are for gun control want gun control so that they can feel more safe. People who are against gun control want less gun control so that they can feel more safe. They're arguing their position from the same reasoning because they believe that their position will make the world safer. Everybody wants to be safe. We all want to be safe. We all struggle with the same things. So how do we reach out to a world that feels scared, that feels worried about the economy, about violence, that feels worried about what they're reading on their Facebook page and what they're reading on Twitter? How do we reach out to them? How do we help them to see you don't have to be afraid? Ephesians 5:17 says, because of all of this, do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. I think God's will is probably one of the most misunderstood things in all of the Bible. We talk about God's will, and some people are like, well, God's will is this mystery, and some people are like, well, if you're an unbeliever, I've heard a lot of these kind of reasonings behind why unbelievers don't want to follow Jesus, and one of them is, if God is all-powerful and God is loving, then how in the world could He allow some of these bad things to happen? How could God allow things like what happened in Orlando? How could God allow the economy to crash? How could God allow these things to happen? And we think that God's will is always for us to be prosperous and safe, and that's not even close to being the truth. God's will, and I may oversimplify this, is us simply to love God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love our neighbor as ourselves. And I think that's what we are called to do. That's what our commandment is, the great commandment, to love God, to serve others, to love others with all of our heart. That is what we are called to do. And if that were the case, if every follower of Jesus Christ was doing that, would the world look like it does right now? I don't know that it would. There would be bad stuff that happens. Sure, life still happens. There'd still be stuff out of our control. There is still this thing called death that we deal with on a daily basis that will not be fully dealt with until Christ returns. But if all of us said, the change I'm going to make in myself is that I'm going to draw closer to God. And maybe if you're not a believer, it's making that first step. You're saying, you know what? The world is scary. I don't want to be afraid. There's a God that you're telling me that is in control. He's not going to promise me safety, but at least with Him, I'll have purpose and opportunity. Maybe that's the start. Maybe if you've been a follower of Jesus for a while, you just commit that you're not going to be worried anymore. You're going to trust God, come what may. The life happens, I'm going to be ready because I have a relationship with Jesus Christ. I have a relationship with God that's going to help me. That I'm going to pray, not just for safety, but I'm going to pray for the response that I have when life happens. And maybe there are some of you that you just need to make a choice to stop doing some bad things that you do in your life. Not because you are commanded to not do them, not because God has a checklist of all your sins that you are doing, but maybe it's because God simply wants you to be freed from the things that keep you from Him. If you want to change the world, it starts with a change in yourself. It starts with a change, and it starts with doing something about what you see around you. You know, there are a lot of people that are suffering. There are a lot of people that are afraid. Is there something that you could do that could help alleviate some of what's going on in the world? There's so much that we can do. And I think about our church. I think about North Hills. And I think about us gathering here on Sunday morning. I think about the school that comes here during the week. We're in summer break right now, but the preschool's still going. We have such an amazing opportunity as individuals and as a church to make a dramatic impact in the world around us. That we can actually start some trends. What would it look like for North Hills to be trending in Vallejo? What would it look like for people to look at us and say, wow, they're making an impact. They're making a difference because the individuals decided that they were going to make a change in their lives. What would it look like for us to make that change, us individually and as a collective church, gathering together to make a difference? What would it look like for us to be trending? What are some other things that we want trending in the area? There's so many bad things. What if we started trends like random acts of kindness? That's an internet thing. Hashtag random acts of kindness. What are some random acts of kindness you can do? Not because you feel like you're obligated, not because you want to be seen, but because you just want to care and you want to be kind and you want to be loving to the world. You know what the greatest random act of kindness I think you can do is? Letting somebody merge in front of you on the highway. Because when you don't let somebody merge, it changes their whole day. Trust me, I know. I try to do that. Or when we come to an intersection in a parking lot, letting somebody go ahead. You know the most dangerous place is, I think, trying to maneuver a cart through Costco. People stop in the middle. People kind of look without watching. They let their kids run around. Like, what if we just were patient and we weren't always in a hurry? Maybe hashtag slow down. What are some other things that we could trend? We could trend the gospel. We could tell people about Jesus. We could tell people about Jesus. Words are so important. But if your words aren't backed up with action, with the way that you live your life, people are going to look at you like you're a hypocrite. So maybe we act like Jesus wants us to act and then tell people why we're doing it. Caring about people. For the next couple weeks, we're going to be giving you all an opportunity to actually engage with us on social media. North Hills has a Facebook page. We have a Twitter account. We have an Instagram account. And we actually just started a Snapchat account. I don't know how that's going to work, but I'm excited about it. Social media is the way that the world gets their information. So our presence on there is the way that people are going to hear about us. When's the last time you got a phone book and you thought, man, I'm really excited that I have this phone book. I finally will be able to get to the businesses and the churches that I want to go to. Phone books are like kindling for fire now. Actually, I had a youth tell me, he's like, so they printed out 500 pages of the internet and they give it to you for free? Yeah, well, I mean, that's the way that the world used to work. Well, now everything's on social media. Our mission, our vision, all of that gets out by social media. So we're going to invite you to do that. And we're going to, over the course of the next 5 or 6 weeks as we do this, we're starting this hashtag, and it's just at the bottom here, hashtag trending NHBC. Trending NHBC. Why are we saying that? Because we want to know what's trending in your life. So as you reflect this morning, I want you to think about what is trending in your life right now. And I want you to pick Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We'll find out how Snapchat works and get that up next week. And we will compile all these. And just, you can, do a Facebook comment on the page with hashtag trending. You can, if you're on Twitter, tweet at NHBC Vallejo, or Instagram, take a picture of something going on in your life, and we're going to compile all these together. And all of you, those of you who do this stuff, or those of you who are like, I'm not on Facebook, I'm not on Instagram, but maybe, I'll do this just for this. We'll compile all that together, and we'll do something fun with them at the end of this series so that we can see what's trending in the life of North Hills. So maybe you do a random act of kindness, and maybe you just tweet that. I mean, that kind of defeats the purpose of doing it randomly, but maybe you just say, hey, I did a random act of kindness today. Or you slowed down, or you took time to pray for somebody. Let us know, and then we'll gather all these together. So right now, as we reflect, I want you to think about this. I want you to think about what is trending in your life right now. As Josh comes forward, the lights are going to come down. Take this as an opportunity to pray. Maybe you have some real hard stuff going on in your life right now. Maybe you know some people that are sick or need prayer or need things to work out. What's trending in your life right now? Maybe it's emotions that are trending. Maybe it's life events. We just had a whole bunch of high school graduates who are going to start off in their new life. Maybe those are life events. Maybe you're the parent who's watching your last kid go off to college or into the workforce. What worries are trending? What are you afraid of? Is it the health of your children? Is it finances? Is it the economy? What worries are trending? What fears and worries are you trending? As you do this, maybe you want to take this as an opportunity to come down and finally give your life to Jesus and get baptized. This will be your opportunity to do that. And then you can go and tell the world about it. And you can be the one who's trending here in North Hills. Because that's what it's all about. There are things trending everywhere. There's so much bad stuff in the world, but what if we created good trends? Trends of love, trends of compassion, trends of people giving their lives to Jesus. So as you reflect on this now, pray where you're at. You can come forward. Maybe you want to join our church. We invite you to do that, to find a home here where we can create trends in Vallejo and the world. As we reflect, go to the Lord in prayer and think about what's trending in your life.